start the dis- we'll start the discussion now. So today we have uh, Chitti Babuji, Leela Krishna ji, Prasad ji, Prateek and Pragnya, Saket, Spriti Mataji, Swati Mataji, और उत्कर्ष जी. So thank you one and all for assembling this evening for learning from this divine message of Lord Krishna given in Bhagavad Gita. So I hope I'm audible to all of you. Uh, if you can just respond, I'll see how many are active. Okay, I'm active. Hari bol. Okay, I'm active. So let me share my screen. Screens. I think I have to share this. Oops, sorry. Oh, sorry for this. Yeah. So this is today's verse. So I'll first recite the verse. All of you can recite after me. Then we will read the translation and then go through the purport. So I think the last sloka. Anyone can let me know what was the last sloka that was discussed? Was it something in 8th chapter? I don't think 9th chapter was discussed before any sloka from mine. 8.15, 16. Okay, so we are jumping almost like 15, 20 slokas. Okay, fine. So this ninth chapter, uh, Prabhupada did name this as, you see here, this is called the most confidential knowledge. So I think all of you would have already learned that in Bhagavad Gita, the first 6 chapters and what are next 6 chapters and what are last 6 chapters. So we are in the middle 6 chapters where this is discussing about the science of devotion, Bhakti Yoga. In that also, this chapter is called the most confidential knowledge. So Lord Krishna here speaks a lot about devotional service, and especially in today's verse, he speaks about the tattva. So tattva is a technical term. All of you can note if you do not know. So tattva, you can understand. Tattva means in truth. So we understand the truth about the philosophical conception behind Krishna. So let's recite this verse. So what is Lord Krishna telling? Avajananti mamudha मानुषीं तनुमाश्रितम् परं भावमजानन्तो मम भूतमहेश्वरम्. So, translation by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Fools deride me when I descend in the human form. They do not know my transcendental nature as the Supreme Lord of all that be. So let us see the sloka in a bit more detail. Avajananti mam mudha. Mudha means fools. So avajananti means they deride. So fools are deriding. Whom? Me. Krishna is telling mam. When are they deriding him? He's telling that manushim tanumashritam. Tanum is body. So deha. So when Krishna is coming like a human being, that's the time when fools are deriding him. And why are they doing so? That he's telling Parambhava Majananto, because these fools do not know the transcendental science. Mama Bhuta Maheshwaram. What is a transcendental science? That Krishna is the supreme controller, that he is a supreme proprietor. Now, let us understand before we jump into this purport, let's try to understand why we have to spend any effort in understanding the tattva of God. Okay, so now what is bhakti? Bhakti is devotion. So you are cultivating devotion to God, and we are also developing loving sentiments towards God. Now imagine, suppose you want to, we are telling that we want to love God. If we want to actually love God, how does it happen? Okay, we know about his name. Yeah, God is called Krishna. We got to know that from Bhagavad Gita and from all the sessions. Then we have to know about more about him. We have to know, especially with Krishna, we have to know about his tattva. Hmm? What is his nature with this material world? and what is his position as God, and what are his activities when he comes, when he descends into this world. When we know all of this, that's when our hearts start getting attracted to the personality of Krishna. That's why understanding Tattva is very important. And Tattva has to be understood in Parampara. That's why we are reading this purport from a bona fide devotee and a great Acharya, Srila Prabhupada. So now let's read the first paragraph. So Prabhupada tells that from the other explanations of the previous verses in this chapter, it is clear that the Supreme Personality of Godhead, although appearing like a human being, is not a common man. The personality of Godhead, who conducts the creation, maintenance, and annihilation of the cosmic manifestation, cannot be a human being. Yet, there are many foolish men who consider Krishna to merely be a powerful man and nothing more. Actually, he is the original Supreme Personality, as is confirmed in the Brahma Samhita. Ishvaraha Paramaha Krishnaha. He is the Supreme Lord. Now, my dear devotees, we have to understand that our perception, that means, suppose we come in contact with some experience or we come in contact with some knowledge, with whatever. So, how we take it in, that is what we call as perception. Matlab, how you take it inside. Now, our perception in this world is limited by our mind, our intelligence. That means now our mind is also a product of our previous experiences, and our intelligence also is a product of what we have learned earlier. That means whatever we come in contact with, though that be the pure spiritual thing, maybe someone even narrates to us a pastime of Krishna, still our understanding of that pastime is limited by our mind and intelligence. That means, how do we, if that's the case, then how do we ever understand anything spiritual? Because something spiritual is beyond the mind, beyond the intelligence, and it's beyond this world. It's called Apaurushaya. So it's coming from God who is not of this world. So how do we even conceive of it with our mind and senses? That's why we have to learn the scripture in parampara. Now, acharyas are the people who have understood the scripture by first learning from their own guru, and their hearts are very pure because of practice of devotion. So, because of that, they are full with realizations, and they also are free from any cheating propensities. That's why they won't try to change the knowledge. They, whatever they learn from their gurus, they present it as it is. So, if you see what Prabhupada is telling, Krishna is not a common man. Now he's telling that Krishna is a supreme controller. So, control. All of us are controllers to some or other degree in our life. If you try to examine every every person who marries and has children, he becomes a controller. He starts controlling his children. He or she, whoever, mother or father, starts to have some control over the children. And say anyone who purchases a house, they have some control over the house. And say anyone who gets who works in who works in a professional environment in office, as they work, as they eventually become managers and senior managers, they have some degree of controller over the employees. And say now these are in the professional settings. Now say if you take social responsibilities, so you have some control over the resources of the country. And if you are say someone like a politician, you have some control over people, because whatever decisions you make, they impact the lives of people. So that's how there have been dictators and autocrats in the past. So Hitler has taken very, very wild decisions. Many people have got affected due to that. So no, even if you're, say if you're president of US, you have control over US, and to a large extent you have control over the entire world. Now Krishna is beyond them. So I mean, why to go up to Krishna? So you have demigods who are controllers, who are much bigger controllers. So and then you have Lord Brahma, who is much greater controller. But Lord Krishna is even greater controller. He is the supreme controller, to the extent that even Brahma, it comes in Srimad Bhagavatam that Brahma, after reading the entire Vedas for 3 times, was baffled about the supreme, about who is God, what is his actual position. He was not able to understand that. Such is the position of God. It's not possible to for us to understand him by our mind, our senses. So, so that is the first thing Krishna is telling. Avajanati Mamuda. So he's telling Mama Bhuta Maheshwaram. He's telling that I am the supreme controller. Then what he's telling is, he's telling Manushim Tanumashritam. Now it becomes even the more harder. You know why? Because such a great person, Krishna, such a supreme controller, is coming like an ordinary human being. He's telling Manushim. He comes just like an ordinary human, having 2 hands. So that's why everyone starts thinking. I mean, one with no knowledge of Shastra may think that Krishna is maybe some great historical person. Some others may tell such a person may like Krishna may not even exist. Some others may tell, God empowered Krishna is ordinary human being, but God, the universal, all-pervading God, empowered this Krishna. That's why he was having some abilities. Otherwise, Krishna is not God. Like that, there are so many conceptions. So that's what even Srila Prabhupada is telling here. If you see, there are so many scholars and commentators of Bhagavad Gita who deride Krishna as an ordinary man. So why does this happen? Are we not seeing in Bhagavad Gita that Krishna is clearly defining his position? This happens because we don't accept the knowledge of Shastra coming in parampara. My dear devotees, please know that we will not be able to understand the true nature of Krishna if we just try to understand him by our mind. Upanishads state that yato vacho nivartante aprapya manasa saha. So this comes in Taittiriya Upanishad. This sloka tells that even if you try to understand Krishna or God at the speed of the mind, it won't be possible. You will simply be baffled. And that's what is the exact position of all these intellectual scholars. Maybe they have great intellectual prowess, but Krishna is beyond any intellect. Krishna is beyond any amount of intelligence. He is not to be captured by intelligence. Therefore, Pra- Krishna also calls. In this case, it's not Prabhupada. Krishna only calls Avajananti Mam Mudha. Such a person is a fool because he's trying to understand Krishna by his mind and intelligence instead of the pure knowledge coming in the parampara. So the foolish consider Krishna an ordinary human being because they do not know the confidential activities of the Supreme Lord. Now, if you see this line tells that the activities of Lord are confidential. What does that mean? So this means that now just by reading say some Shastra on your own or on anyone's own, like if they read the Shastra, they may okay have some knowledge about what Krishna has done, but just by knowing that you won't know actually that you won't get the complete benefit of learning from that of reading that pastime, because the nature of Lord is confidential. That means Krishna is not doesn't reveal himself to anyone and everyone. That doesn't happen. Krishna reveals himself only to one who is surrendered to him, one who is faithful to him in devotion service. So, otherwise, for one who is not faithful to the path of scripture and one who is not faithful to the path of devotion, Krishna won't reveal. Now, if Krishna is not revealing, what are they understanding? No, whatever they are understanding is based on their mind and intelligence. That's not what that's not the absolute truth. So that's where a devotee has to be sincere. So the devotee has to be faithful to Krishna. So and we have to be faithfully executing the process of devotion without by s- by being simple hearted and learning from the acharyas and executing that with simplicity and devotion in heart. So then what Prabhupada tells? So he tells that if you see, if a soul surrendered to Krishna can get out of the influence of material energy, then how can the Supreme Lord who conducts the creation, maintenance, and annihilation of whole cosmic nature have a material body like us? So now Prabhupada is giving various philosophical arguments that why Krishna is not like an ordinary human being. So why Krishna is beyond an ordinary human being. So till now we have understood that how Krishna is not like an ordinary person, and Krishna is a supreme controller. And we have also understood that Krishna cannot be understood by our mind. Then what is the way to understand him? We have to understand Krishna by learning from scripture, which are taught by acharyas like Srila Prabhupada. Now we also have to understand that Krishna, now Krishna is coming in the form of a human. That doesn't make Krishna a human. Krishna is all pervading supreme personality. So our Vedas are stating that Krishna is there in each and every atom. Then does that mean that Krishna doesn't have a form? No. Even that is not what Krishna is meaning. So even though Krishna is all pervading, so he is there all, everywhere he is there. Still Krishna has a personal form. But that form is not material. That is a very important thing to understand from this verse. Krishna's form is not material. Now, Shastras do state that God has no legs, God has no eyes, God has no hands, etc. So this is where this is a another topic, that how to understand scripture. But this is where we understand a logic that in scripture, if a statement is direct, we have to take the direct meaning. But in cases where, only in cases where the direct meaning is not very clear, we have to use some amount of interpretation and link it to other verses in the scripture and see them as a whole to get the understanding. Now, let us use the same framework. So, some portions of scriptures are telling that God has no legs, no hands, no eyes, etc. Now, same scripture at many other places is glorifying the hands of God. He is glorifying the lotus feet of God. He is glorifying the lotus eyes of the Lord. He is glorifying the beautiful form of the Lord. Hmm? So, and in fact, Srimad Bhagavatam is even glorifying the Tulasi which is there in between the toes of Krishna, so of Lord Vishnu. So that means scripture is telling on one hand that God has no person, on the other hand, it's telling that God is a person, which means that God doesn't have a material form. So he doesn't have like us a human body which has to die. Rather, God has got a spiritual form. So that's the reason, huh? That's the reason the Lord's appearance as a man bewilders as the foolish. Yeah. So now we will end with, we will end by telling that. Yeah, so you will hear so many arguments that so if you see here, Prabhupada is presenting a argument from Mayavad philosophy. So Prabhupada tells that see this is one argument they're giving. Aham sarveshu bhuteshu bhutata bhutatma avasthita sada. The Supreme is present in every living entity. So so there are many statements like this. So to understand scripture in completion, we have to learn from acharyas. And so for us, one important conclusion is that Krishna has a transcendental form. And when we see the deities, so when you go to the temple, there are deities, right? So now what are those deities? So are they not Krishna? So you have to know that the deity is Krishna. So how is it Krishna? So a pure devotee or some pure devotees of Krishna personally invite him through a through a bona fide ceremony called Prana Pratishtha. So that means we make a Archa Murti, so a Vigraha of the Lord according to the Vedic injunctions, and a ceremony called Prana Pratishtha is done by an exalted devotee of the Lord, wherein they invite the presence of God into their deity. So by this ceremony, the deity becomes non-different from the God, which means deity is God. So when you go to temple, so when you see the God over there, so Krishna is there. I mean, Krishna is not there in the Krishna is there in the deity, and Krishna is the deity. It's not that Krishna is there in that deity. So the amount of reciprocation you can get from the deity just depends on how much devotion we have. So according to our devotion, this deity can reciprocate personally with us. So in Kanchi, there used to be a devotee. Several, I think, over 1,000 years, 1,000 years ago, there used to be a devotee called Kanchi Purna. So it was told that Lord Varadaraj, who was the Perumal, the deity over there, used to personally talk to him. So it was not once. In fact, even when Sri Ramanujacharya goes and asks by getting to know that Kanchipurna is able to talk to Lord Varadaraj directly, Ramanujacharya once goes and asks Kanchipurna to clarify a set of 6 questions which he submits to Kanchipurna. So that way, the point is that the deity reciprocates with the devotee. So Krishna is the deity. So that's why from next time when we see the deity, we should think that Krishna is personally there in that. We should see that Krishna is personally the deity, and that's why we should be very careful uh, to not make any offenses by thinking with false conception. I mean, by misconceptions that a deity is not Krishna or deities are idols, etc. So such a conception should not be there. So we should know that deity is the Krishna himself, and they can accept our devotion service completely. So yeah, so this is where we would like to end today's verse. So it is a bit philosophical, but I explained that why it is important to understand this philosophy at the beginning itself. That why is it important? Because we have to understand the Lord in completion. That's when our hearts get attracted to Him, and that's how the devotion develops in our heart. So that's one thing. And I was also telling that our perceptions are limited by our mind and intelligence. That's why, even though we may read the pure message given in Shastra like this, or like this verse, or we may get in contact with the pure pastimes of Lord Krishna, still we won't be able to understand them as they are. We will understand them as we are. So how do we understand then what is actually being told there? That happens by purification of heart, which happens by following the path of devotional service given by acharyas and learning the scriptures. And we also understood how Krishna is the supreme controller. So he's not like any other controller in this world, but he's the supreme one. And we also understood how Krishna's uh, body is not like human body. So Krishna's body is a transcendental body. And we also understood that we cannot understand Krishna by scholarly aptitude. No, Krishna is beyond any amount of intelligence. Then how to understand Krishna? Krishna is understood by faithfully serving him in devotion and faithfully pleasing him by our devotion. That's when Krishna will choose to reveal himself to us from our heart. So this is where we like to end the today's session. Uh, Anyone would like to ask any questions? Any one two questions towards the end? Hare Krishna. So I hope then everything is clear. Uh, Hope this short session was nourishing. Uh, to all of your mind, intelligence, and hearts. And I hope all of you understood the importance to learn further about Krishna's personality from scripture so that our hearts get more and more attracted to his personality and they become more pure and our understanding of devotional service becomes more pure. That's how we will be able to better practice the path of devotion. So with this, we would like to end the session. Thank you, everyone. Again, thank you.